Alice and I are always looking to be more healthy, and we were just talking about how fasting is one of the best ways to do that. But it's so hard. But the great thing about Prolon is that's not what you're doing. It's not that you're not eating for 5 days. Instead, you're using their science-backed program to convince your body you're fasting.
You guys, this 5-day program really is amazing. It comes beautifully packaged and it does all the thinking for you. Each day is its own box. And by following their program, I know I just feel so much better. And I can't wait to experience Prolong Next Gen and continue to see results. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolong is offering the Prosecutors listeners 15% off site-wide plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/prosecutors. That's prolonlife.com/prosecutors to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/prosecutors.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on the Prosecutors, our live Patreon Get Vokl. You had questions, and we had answers. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live Get Vokl. I'm Brett. I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Alice. Hello, Alice.
Hey, Brett. How you doing? Good to see your face. I don't always get to see your face when we record.
Alice is showing off her Felix Gray glasses, so, always, what is it? Always be closing. Always be closing. Well, hey, we got 2 spots down here. You guys know how this works. This is really about y'all, though I know what I want to talk about first, so I get the first topic.
I actually don't know what you want to talk about.
But I know. It's a surprise. Something. It's a surprise.
Okay.
Wow. There you go. When do we head to Crime Expo? I'll address that first. Wait, is that the last week in September?
September 24th, 5th. Let me look at the calendar right now because September 25th.
September 25th. So if you're not already heading to the Savannah Crime Expo, join us September 25th. It's going to be awesome. Alice is going to bring her fiddle. It'll be amazing. Devil's going down to Georgia.
Devil is going down to Georgia. This is true. We don't plan on doing live shows, but at Crime Expo, but we will talk to you in person.
Yeah, we will be alive there. So it's like a live show, but a little different. Are they doing live shows? I don't really know. I mean, we have
no idea. We haven't done our homework, to be honest.
We're the worst, we're the worst. We're just the worst. Let's leave it at that. We're the worst.
Justin.
How's it going?
Hey.
What's up, Justin?
All right, can I jump in with the question already?
Of course, Justin. You go ahead. I'll save my question, or not my question, but I'll save what I want to say in a second.
I'm going to turn it right up to 11.
You do that. Hey, Arnold. How's it going?
Hey, Arnold.
So the 3-part Delphi episode that True Crime Garage had recently. Mm-hmm. Did you guys listen to that?
I have to admit, I still have not listened to it. I don't know how I feel about it. I know what you're going to ask. I don't know how I feel.
It's queued up, but I haven't brought myself to listen.
I'm just really interested in how much you guys believe in this. It had to be a fake name, Skip or whatever his name is, but I didn't even pay attention because I knew it was a fake name. I'd love to hear that. Also, I sent you guys the link to this other guy who's not true crime. He's not in this field, but he had like a 2-hour-long segment on YouTube with amazing research. Delphi. I think his name is like Tom Watson. I could be wrong, but it's. I sent you guys the link. I wonder if you check that out and what you thought too. That's it. Delphi, right from the gun.
Well, we're bad. We haven't done either one. I admit. And I gotta say about the True Crime Garage one, I love True Crime Garage. Everybody knows how I feel about True Crime Garage. That guy and his theory have been floating around the internet for a long time, right? Like if you went to Reddit, if you hung out on any of the Delphi Reddit subreddits, you know that guy and you know his theory. And so I just haven't listened to it on purpose because I don't know how I feel about it, and I just kind of felt like I'm just gonna ignore this and pretend it never happened and move on to sort of the next episode, because naming people, implying that certain people may be the killer, that is so dangerous. I know everybody uses letters as if that matters, right? Like as if you can't figure out who they're talking about, and as if it's not available online. I mean, it's funny because on all the subreddits, people use letters to name everybody, but then they have a key, and you can go to the key and figure out what the letters mean. So it's like, what's the purpose of this letter thing? Like, do you think that's keeping people anonymous? Because it's not.
There are multiple people with the same initials though, so the key is like almost now because of how long it is.
Yeah. Even worse, because then you've got like 5 different people who you could just be accusing of murder.
I don't think there's any JJs, so Justin Jackson's not on there yet. So thankfully,
Let me say this about it. I think a lot of it seemed like it's based on the guy's story kind of changing a little bit here or there. Mm-hmm. And that's going to happen, right? I mean, we talk about this all the time. When you're looking at statements and trying to determine whether or not they're consistent, there are going to be little changes over time. You're going to forget things. You're going to confuse things. You're going to misremember things. They've done studies with this on 9/11. We're coming up on the 9/11 anniversary. And the number of people who remember 9/11 in a way that's impossible for them to remember it. So they remember like seeing certain things or being certain places, and they absolutely 100% remember it, but that's not what happened. And it's impossible for them to have done that. It's just the memory is such a weird thing. It's one reason that we always caution about eyewitness statements. I mean, even though we believe in eyewitnesses and we know they're valuable, you really need to pair them up with something else, right? So just the notion that because this guy's story has shifted over time, he's the killer, it's just a little bit of a leap for me. And I realize it's more than that, but that was my main sort of problem with it.
And one other thing, we've said this before. Actually, when someone tells us the exact same story twice in the exact same way with no deviations, it indicates that they're lying because they've memorized some sort of version that they want us to know. And so that alone would not be a flag for us. Justin, that was a great email, by the way. I admit I've queued up the episodes but haven't listened to them because I think anyone who listens to our podcast knows I love is a bad word for it, but I really feel strongly about the Delphi case.
I'll give someone else a spot, but I'll be back next time because it's now you guys.
Thanks, Justin.
For 3 months.
And next time we'll have listened.
Hey, Arnold.
Hi.
Thanks for grabbing the spot.
Yeah. So I just started listening to you guys. Well, not just started because I'm almost done with all the episodes on Spotify, but. I guess I have a request, and I'm sure you've gotten this request, and don't hate me for being redundant, but are you guys going to do Adnan Syed?
I'm sure we'll do it eventually. It's one we'll get to. The problem with Adnan Syed, I wish if we were going to do it, we had worked something up before we started the podcast. Because it's one of those that it's going to take so much time to do it right that planning for it while doing the podcast is actually really hard, if that makes sense, because you got to like research for the next episode, right? And then you're thinking, and so oftentimes, when we do like one-off episodes, what's happening is we have a single episode, and while we're doing that, we're also researching what's going to be like a multi-parter episode. Yeah. So at some point, we just have to sit down and do it because so many people have asked for it, and I would like to look at it because. Like so many cases, I sort of have my surface level view of what I think, but I have no idea how accurate that is, right? I mean, I listen to Serial like everybody else did, and that's basically where my knowledge of it comes from. But
I guess. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Arnold.
Oh, because so I know a lot like the podcasting community is for him being innocent, but I was really involved in Reddit with it, and they're all convinced he's guilty, and everyone points to the trial transcripts and juries, the jurors coming out. So that's why I wanted you guys to do it because you're prosecutors. So I thought that might be to hear your take on it because I'm toward the guilty side. And
I got to be totally honest
with you.
If you read the trial transcripts, it's people say it's obvious. So I don't know.
Well, here's the thing with all these cases. That's why we are hesitant to say our thoughts before we dive into it. Yeah, I've listened to the podcast. I've seen documentaries. And of course, I probably think what they want you to think until we start reading transcripts, until we start looking at the evidence and we start reading the appeals briefs and the opinions. And then we're like, this is completely opposite of what I thought because I was just looking at what mainstream presented. And so we're actually in the same boat as all of y'all until we decide to commit to a case and dive in. And the problem is, as Brett noted, we haven't taken like a single day or a week break since we started more than a year ago. I think like most shows take a break. Brett, we should think about taking a break.
We should probably take a break at some point.
Thanks, Megan.
We don't want to let you guys down.
I know I'm almost through other episodes, so I'm like, I need more.
I got to say, the Scott Peterson experience was an eye-opener for me because that documentary, everybody points to it, but it is so biased and it is so misleading, and I just couldn't believe it. I really was shocked, and that just shows how naive I am, right? So when I think about Serial, it's like, I don't know.
Because actually what got me into you guys was I'm on like another, not true crime, like Facebook group, but they talk about it there, and they're talking about that thing and how biased it was. And someone was like, oh, go look at the prosecutor's podcast about Scott Peterson. And that's how I got hooked on you guys. So that was the first one I listened to. And then I pretty much am almost done with all the rest of them. So I don't know what I'm going to do at work.
You're really nice to binge us.
That's awesome.
Scott Peterson was fun. But also the eye opener for me was Ray Rivera, because I watched the Unsolved Mystery.
Yeah,
well,
I personally actually didn't know anything about Ray Rivera. Like I knew the name, but I knew nothing about it. And I watched the episode. Brett was like, "Go watch the episode." He told me nothing, and I watched it and I was like, "There's nothing to talk about. Like I don't even know what to think." And then we dug into it, and I was like, "How are they allowed to put that on TV? That's so misleading."
Yeah. So last thing, because I don't want to hog time, but I'm a PhD scientist or getting my PhD scientist, and I sometimes get sucked into the conspiracy theories. And with the Ray Rivera, I was like, he was dropped from a helicopter. Like
That's what Alice thought too.
I was like, oh, it was completely like, it made so much sense. And that's kind of like what my training is, to like think something.
I love conspiracies. I love them.
I like thinking about it. It's like a brain exercise, but like when you guys did that, I was like, oh yeah, he probably just killed himself. I was thinking, like, I hate to say it, but like, what the Unsolved Mysteries, I told all my friends about it. I'm like, this case is insane. And when you guys did it and broke it down, I was like, oh yeah, it's actually not that weird when you think about it.
It's still an really interesting case, I think.
Yeah.
It's just, and I feel like this is true of so many of these cases we do. They're really interesting, but people are like, well, they're not interesting enough. We want to make them more interesting. And the way to make them more interesting is we'll just leave that little bit out.
Yeah.
We just won't tell you about that thing. And then when you look at it, you're like, oh, okay, well, if you'd told us this.
I wonder, does Unsolved Mysteries actually want to solve the mystery, or are they just trying to make it more entertaining? Like, I mean, they want it entertaining so people watch, and so I don't know. Sorry to jump in.
No problem.
You're right.
Everyone should jump in.
Yeah.
So I will leave, but I'll be back, I'm sure, in your future Get Vocals. But I'm gonna just listen.
Thanks,
but
Arnold.
thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arnold.
Megan,
Megan.
hi.
Fangirl for like 10 seconds. You guys listen to podcasts, so you understand how you have a podcast and it feels like home. It feels like your friends are with you on your morning run. You don't want to get up. It's dark out. You guys are that for me on Tuesdays. So I know you're that for a lot of people. So I love listening to you guys. I even like when you do a case that I feel like I've heard everything about, because I haven't heard your take on it. And there's so many true crime podcasts that you guys bring something unique. And I think you know that, but I just wanted to tell you that. And I do have a question. So on your website.
Well, thank you first. Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry. I was actually on a date tonight and I ended it early so I could come home to do this.
Megan, we are so honored, but I'm sorry.
See, you would have known he was the one if he was like, I want to go do it with you. That would have been.
No, I don't need someone to share this with me. And I told
Megan, you take the cake tonight.
He looked. What? What's that?
You get all the awards tonight. You get the awards for like most committed fan tonight.
That's pretty committed.
Okay. So my question was, so on your website, one of the first things you say is usually the simplest answers is the one. The simplest answer is the answer. And I would definitely agree with you, especially like that Brandon Lawson case. Like I was analyzing one call, and then just the more you hear about like his sad drug history and everything, the more it makes sense, you know, and same like with Elisa Lam and things like that. So I was wondering, is there a case that you guys think the simplest answer is not it? This is what it is, or maybe we know that it is. Maybe it's something that's solved. I don't know. I just thought that would be for you guys.
Well, let me say this thing. Sometimes I think what people think the simplest answer is not the simplest answer. Right. So like, let me use the Dyatlov pass as an example of that. I think most people would say the simplest answer for the Dyatlov pass is the avalanche. Right. But as we went through ad nauseum, the avalanche is not the simplest answer because it doesn't answer all the questions. So if it doesn't answer the questions, how can it be the simplest answer? Right. You know, another case, and this is actually one of the things I want to talk about. So I don't want to take all your time, Megan, but, and I don't want to hog the microphone, Alice, but Ben McDaniel. Okay. I want to talk about Ben McDaniel real quick because I think that was the first one where people kind of pushed back on what we said because they were like, this is weird because normally you guys don't buy into conspiracy theories. I feel like this is a conspiracy theory, right? Okay, but think about Ben McDaniel. I actually think the simplest answer is that someone found his body, right? And then hid the body. Because I think the simplest thing that happened here is not that Ben went on some massive excursion or was on some suicidal plunge, is that he went down there like he always did, had an accident in a fairly easy place. And then maybe as he's trying to leave, you know, they've locked the gate behind him because they know he can get out, right? Like they opened the gate for him to go through. But my assumption has always been that they locked it behind him because they didn't want other people to be able to get in. And they knew that Ben could get out. But if Ben had a problem with his oxygen down there and he gets up to the gate and the gate's locked and he drowns, right? Then it's very simple. I mean, that is the simplest, most straightforward answer. And the only reason that it's not that is because we didn't find his body. His body is missing. And why is his body missing, right? So, you know, sometimes I think it's just that the simplest answer is not, it's like hides, right? And so you don't actually know that it's the simplest one. But I don't know. I mean, it's a good question.
It's because you're right. If they hadn't that guy go look so far in for his body, then I would, no, he's just probably in there. That guy went in so far. So I agree with you, and it does kind of sound conspiracy. But I knew you were gonna say the avalanche thing about the Dyatlov Pass, but I would agree that's not the simplest.
I'm glad you know me so well.
It could not be. So it's not the simplest answer. What do you think, Alice? Or do you have any like cases where you're like?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to say that about the Dyatlov Pass. I think the reason that rule works for us is once something is the precursor to that conclusion, right? It's once you march through all of the evidence, the simplest answer is the most likely.
Gotcha.
And I think where most people leave out is the precursor. They don't put in the work of looking at the evidence. They don't read through the primary texts, right? They just listen and they're like, well, if we're hearing all these things, then that can't be the simplest answer. And so I think if everyone kind of did the work with us, and we get it, our podcasts are long, right? Scott Peterson went on for forever. But if you marched through all the hours of evidence, then I think you reach our conclusion, which is the simplest answer is true. Yeah. But we also contradict ourselves because a lot of the cases we talk about boggle the mind. I mean, there are some of them. I remember early on in our podcast journey, we would end several of these cases with, I don't know, I have no idea. And we would stop recording and I would say, no one's going to listen to this episode. This is so frustrating that there is no answer. But the reason there's no answer in some of these extraordinary cases is something extraordinary happened. I think something extraordinary happened in Dyatlov Pass. And that is why, after all this time and after all these people who have looked at it with their expertise, they can't find a theory that answers all the questions, because I think something extraordinary happened there. And so, we kind of bookend our rules, because I think that's true. Life is extraordinary at times, and much of the cases that we all become enthralled with, we become enthralled because there's something about them that is out of the ordinary. So
I didn't want you to think I was pushing back. Like, I definitely agree with you. I just wanted like a mind exercise. One that comes to my mind when you were talking about how some things are like extraordinary, like Mara Murray. Like, I used to be really into that. I'm not going to get crazy, but like, if someone's going to get picked up by a serial killer, like, someone has to get picked up by a serial killer. Why not a girl broken down on the side of the road? Like, who else is going to get picked up by a serial killer? She's a vulnerable victim. So some people like don't look at the serial killer thing, because also she could have just wandered into the woods. So that's kind of another one where it's like, I kind of feel like both of those things could have happened.
I will say this. I think you're right, actually, that really any serial killer case is an example of that, right? So like Amy Bechtel, Amy Bechtel, she goes for a run in the mountains. She disappears. Probably the simplest answer is she went off the trail for some reason and fell in a ravine and died, and nobody ever found her. I mean, that's the simplest answer. And that happens all the time, right? Or like a cougar attacked her. It happens all the time. Now, we went through the reasons we don't think that's true. And it's certainly an extraordinary thing if like you said, if a serial killer happens to come along when you're walking down the road and picks you up. So that probably anytime that happens is a good example of one. And look, I think Mara Murray is such a weird case, and I know everybody hates when I talk about Mara Murray because I talk about it all the time. But yeah, I mean, look, I'd pick the simplest answer, that she wandered off in the woods and died. Alice doesn't think that. Alice thinks it was more complicated than that. So,
Alice, what did you think? Did you think
a variation of that? I think she is not alive anymore, but I think she walked and got into someone's car, but it wasn't someone waiting for her. I think she hitchhiked, because we have knowledge that she was not afraid of hitchhiking and had recently done it in those areas. And I think she got into the wrong person's car, and she is dead somewhere far from where that is. And I don't know that all states share their, mortuary findings. And it's very possible she's just dead in Maine, and no one thought to share those records with another state.
Or maybe she's a bartender in Canada. Who knows?
One of you is right. I don't know who it is, but I don't think it's like this big conspiracy, like a tandem car or anything. I think both of your theories are pretty simple and could have happened.
And if you can tell me what the simplest theory is in the Brian Schaefer case, I'd love to hear it, because I don't know what it is.
Well, what did I just listen to? Did you guys do that one? I feel like
that was a pretty early one.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
I guess maybe I was listening to the captain, maybe one of the guys from True Crime Garage, maybe talk about it. There's a podcast called My Pet Case or something like that, My Favorite Case. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned how could it just be as easy as there just isn't a camera facing every door? Like something like that? Or no?
Well, the problem with that is there's cameras all over the place down there, right? So even if he got out of the bar, and now granted, it is easier once you're out of the bar for just people who are watching the video not to notice you, right? Now, my understanding is the police went over and over and over and over those videos and watched them 1,000 times. Doesn't mean he didn't get out of them. But even if he did, what happened to him then? I mean, I guess at that point it could just be more of a standard case, but still he still managed to vanish into thin air. That's what's crazy, is even if we had seen him walking out of the bar that day, this still would be an extraordinary case, because a guy, ordinary medical student, just vanishes into thin air, but we don't even have that. So
I think this one's crazier than Brandon Lawson. Well, I saw somebody else jump on, so I'm going to jump out. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank
Megan.
you,
Thanks for leaving your day
You're
early.
Awesome.
Elizabeth, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Roll Tide.
Elizabeth. Roll Tide. Did you also leave your date early to join us tonight?
I did not know. Sorry.
It's okay. That's a really high bar to meet. We're not going to hold it against you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Well, I'm back to Delphi again. I saw somebody earlier ask a question. I just jumped on, so I don't know if you'd already answered it. I apologize. But the captain and his colleague, I forget the other guy's name, Nick, have mentioned that whole other theory about the main witness being the potential suspect. And I've been dying to ask you what you both think about that. How much have you listened to that, and what do you think?
So we did discuss it, but I'll recap what I said. I have not listened to it because I got a bad feeling about it. I just have a bad feeling about the whole thing. It may be true. If it's true, I hope the police arrest the guy, and we all know. I don't love the speculation about somebody who everybody knows who they are. And that theory's been bopping around Reddit for a while, so it didn't really feel like something brand new that needed to be brought out there. But I mean, I'm not going to criticize it just because, as we've said 1,000 times, the more we talk about the case, the better. I just wish they could have done it maybe without talking so much about the specific person. Now, as far as whether or not, go ahead, Alice.
I was just going to say, so Elizabeth, you may have missed this, but both of us have held off on listening to it because I think we both love this case so much, and we don't want to quite delve into that arena yet because of the concerns that Brett talked about. But also, I just have to note again, I know you guys, we're preaching to the choir over here, but almost no case was solved because someone had a gotcha moment who was not law enforcement and named who they thought it was, right? And I'll tell you why. I've had cases messed up where lay people do that and completely blow our cover or completely blow up the case for evidentiary reasons because someone just like runs on, Twitter and says, it was Brett. And I'm like, I've been tracking this for 3 months. You ruined everything. And so that is just a realistic view from law enforcement's perspective. And from just like our perspective, we cannot, you can't put onto evidence a podcast. And so there is a reason in all our podcasts, we're like, here's the tip line, call the tip line. If you're afraid to go to them, talk to us, and then we will give it to the tip line. We never say that we're going to then investigate it. We say we're going to go turn it over to the right authorities because of evidentiary issues and what's admissible and not admissible in court.
One day when we can talk about it, we'll tell you about our most recent experience.
All right. Well,
in our professional lives.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
That was a great question, though, Elizabeth.
That was a good question, Elizabeth.
Hi, Katie.
Hello, Katie.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
Time. So I appreciate you guys. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you more.
Oh, well, that is very
and
kind.
So brave. Everybody's being so brave today and getting on.
I know. Thank you guys for jumping on. Hi, Juliana.
Hi.
So I had, I listen to you guys out on the walk, blah, blah, blah. And like, I feel like the common theme is people go missing, right? What's that first thing? They ran off, right? And so that is, they ran off, their case closed. But like, statistically speaking, do we know that that's what like a large amount of people have done? Or is that just what we go to as I'm not law enforcement, but is that, like, is there validity to that, statistically, that people do just run off? I mean, I know it happens, but like in that amount, right?
Well, I'll say this. I think law enforcement does a better job now of not jumping to that, particularly with kids, because used to be with kids, well, they ran away. That was what they probably just ran away. They'll come back. Call us in, a couple of days if they don't come back or whatever. And most law enforcement agencies totally get away from that now because, as we know, if you don't find a missing child within 24 hours, they're probably dead. And you got to start looking immediately. Now, with adults, I remember that case, and I can't remember her name, but there was a girl maybe a year and a half ago, and every picture you saw was a picture of her as a cheerleader or whatever. And her mother said that she had been kidnapped, and it turned out that her mother really wanted her to stay with her boyfriend, and she really wanted to break up with her boyfriend, so she ran away with her new boyfriend. And for like 3 days, you thought it was a missing persons case. And then it turned out it wasn't, and the police found her, and they announced, like, look, we found her, she's safe, she doesn't want to talk. and I believe it was an Ohio case, but I can't remember her name. So it happens. Now the number and there are several famous cases of people who commit crimes and go on the run, and then like decades later they'll be uncovered. That happens every now and then too. But I will say this: I think the average person doing that, I mean, that'd be pretty tough, right? Like I'm looking at a case right now. Yeah, I'm looking at a case right now that we're probably going to cover where someone they're supposed to be going off somewhere for the day, like at schoolwork. What I don't want to give too much away. And when the police look at their bank account, they empty their bank account, and then they disappeared. Right. Well, that's an obvious sign that they're disappearing. But when you look at these cases where there are no unusual withdrawals of money, no action on the credit cards, no use of cell phone, how did they do it? Right? How would they have just ran away? And maybe that's easier now with things like Bitcoin and stuff like that. But I'm going to go with it is a very small percentage, though I'm happy to be corrected if anybody has actual data on that.
We're just going to add something on that. I feel like a lot of the instincts in these missing individual cases are to did they run away to start a new life? And to me, as someone, I'm a lawyer, I'm at Jones Day. I've been here as an associate for almost, 9 years. My life is completely wrapped up in my career, my degrees, the bills I have. And for me to disappear, it would be something that I couldn't go back, I think, to practicing law wherever I went. I'd have to find a new profession. And sure, do I have contacts at work that could probably get me in contact with some darker people who can get me a new passport, a new identification, a new social security. So I really could get off the grid. Yes. But I feel like in these situations, some of these individuals in these cases are not as invested with all of their obligations that they have in their everyday life. So disappearing isn't as, I think, as hard as a concept for me to get, because it would be almost going program for me. It would be like similar. So I don't know to the extent where these individuals have a lot of money to begin with. Certainly they have stuff in the bank. Of 600 withdrawal is, like you said, something that would a trigger. But these things happen so quickly to these individuals, and you're wondering, did they just chose to walk off and disappear? And normally, if you're going to disappear, you've been planning for a while. At least smart individuals who kind of have a plan of how they're going to do it. They're ciphering money off into accounts that can't be noticed when people are reviewing their transaction logs. There's little things here and there over the course of a time span. And individuals who, in the heat of the moment, freak and decide to walk off into a new life, I just think that for them not to come back, they're going to realize how difficult it is to exist out there without a social security number. And as soon as you're employed with your social, boom, that's it. You can find you. And so I just find it difficult that these individuals were able to leave so quickly, probably with very little money, to be able to get the resources to completely go off the grid.
It's very limited on what you can do. Go down to Mexico for a little bit and maybe be on the beach or something. But if there isn't a trace of like the big, withdrawals and that sort of thing, it's just interesting that that's like the most common theme. Well, we just thought they ran off to start a new life. You know what I mean?
And you have to be really committed.
I don't think we've actually covered a case where we concluded that the person ran off to start a new life. And here's why. I think it's a very popular theory for people because we are all hopeful people, right? I think none of us go into listening to a podcast or reading a true crime book or watching a movie thinking, geez, I really hope it stays unsolved or the person died a terrible, tragic death and there's like no justice in the world. I think we are actually all very hopeful people. We hope for the best. I wish more than anything that Aisha Degree is alive somewhere, that she just didn't like her family and at 9 years old walked off and found a new family and has a great life, and she's young and had no bills and no credit cards, so she was untraceable. I wish more than anything that were the case. Statistically, that's probably not what happened to her, right? I wish Maura Murray were alive somewhere. I'd love that theory because it means there's hope, right? It means that's the unknown and the unspeakable hasn't happened to those that we feel close to because we've invested a lot of time in getting to know them. Now, I agree with you, Juliana, completely. I think it is way harder to disappear out of your life than most people give credit to. Not just because I know some people talked about biometrics and digital imaging and whatnot, but just relationally, we are also interconnected with people. It is really difficult to completely disappear and never be spotted again. You know, Brett and I, part of our job is looking for fugitives, right? A fugitive is just defined as someone who is wanted by the law and they try to disappear. And sometimes it takes years to locate someone, but there are lots of ways available to law enforcement. And we just see it from the fugitive perspective, not even from a missing person's perspective. The fugitive, you think, has an incentive to stay disappeared, whereas a missing person or a person who's walked off may not have quite as high of an incentive to completely wipe their existence off the face of the earth, right? They just kind of want to start over somewhere else. And I have yet to have a case, even if it takes a long time, not to be able to have some inkling of where someone is at some point. Even if I can't find them directly, I'm like, I now can trace them to this area at this time period because I got a ping on a phone to their girlfriend. Then their phone went dark because they threw it out, right? But I then have a track. I'm like, okay, it's not like I haven't seen them for 6 months. I now have a ping of where they are and have some general idea of where they are. So all to say is, it's so hard to disappear. And I think that's why we haven't reached the conclusion in any of our cases so far, as much as I'd like that to be the actual reality, that anyone has actually walked off.
Alice and I have people who want to disappear all the time, you know, whether they're witnesses or people who are on the lam or whatever. And a lot of them are really good, actually, sort of, because they deal mostly in cash. They use burner phones, right? I mean, they actually are pretty good at staying under the radar, but even them, you know, you're going to find them eventually. And Alice is 100% right. The reason you find them is because the relationships are the hardest part to break off. You know, we haven't covered it yet. I think the one case that I know of where I think it's possible, and I would hope it were true, it's kind of like my hope, is Emma Filipov. Some of you all know that case. You know, she was in a situation where she could have just walked off, and if she could have survived initially, you could imagine her making her way into sort of various communities where maybe she could have disappeared. I don't think that's likely, but it's possible. But there's not a lot of them, I don't think.
I just want to add my theory on the Brian Schaefer disappearance. And I've looked into this. I don't think any more than I've looked into some other cases, so it wasn't something I spent a lot of time on. Is, you know, I think given the death of his mother, I think he occasionally recreationally used cocaine. Just, he wasn't an abuser of it. He wasn't an addict. It was just at a party, he might have a couple of lines. I think in this particular instance, he was feeling the death of his mother very hard, was in kind of a bad place that night. So when he went out with that individual from his med school class, who people have now said they're not that close, it was strange why they were in touch and why they went out tonight. I think he knew he could get cocaine from either his friend's dealer or he had to connect to how to connect. And I think that at that bar the night, he asked his friend to put him in touch with somebody. And whether he put him in touch with the dealer that his friend knew or the dealer's friend, I think Brian went out the back door, the employee entrance that wasn't on camera. I think he met for a buy in the back alley. I think they intended probably to rip off this med school kid. Or if they didn't intend to, maybe they pretend, you know, we were going to give him something that wasn't pure product, or whatever the case, a scuffle ensued, or maybe they were just going to rob him and knifed him in the stomach and threw him in the dumpster. And the dumpsters were, you know, cleared that weekend. They were taken out. And I remember that woman, Lori Hacking or something in Utah, who was, he faked had been getting into I think North Carolina med school and was the big move and all of that. And it turns out it's a whole lie. When he admitted to dumping her in the landfill, and it took them 34 days. And what they found were bone fragments of her shoulder. Right. So I think at the time when they figured out, you know, the dumpster's gone, and when they figured out the cocaine, and everyone kind of was like, well, why is his friend lawyering up? Why has he always refused to cooperate? Well, can you imagine him saying in a record that could become public that, yeah, occasionally I'm a doctor, or I'm going to be a doctor. I occasionally used cocaine, or I knew somebody who used it who could get it to my friend. And in this case, that's what happened. I arranged a transaction. I mean, not only talking about charges, we're talking about a ruined career. I mean, he can lose residency, whatever match he made, it's done for him. So that makes sense to me why he completely blew it up. And I think that some of that information the police do know. It's just too late to recover the body. Is what I think that happened there.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. And I know, I feel like the captain knows more than he wants to say. Like, if you talk to the captain about it, he's always very cagey about it. Now, last time we talked to him, he was hinting that Brian was still alive, which kind of blew my mind. But I mean, that's a great theory. You know, I mean, I could that would make. I mean, that would make sense. It fits everything. It explains a lot of weird stuff.
At least it fits what could have happened.
Right. I wish, you know, it's like so many things. I wish we just had one little piece of evidence. You know, I mean, if we know that he was sort of a recreational cocaine user, which sounds like we do know.
I think some friends from what I think that I heard on the garage show, I think they said that he in the past had used cocaine a few times or had seen, and I think that given what cocaine is and the fact that he was from pretty bad shape with the death, he might have just, you know, been drinking at the bar and felt really good and wanted something to feel even better.
Right.
Yeah, what I like about that theory, that's what really, you've thought a lot about this and it sounds absolutely possible. What I like about that is whenever you insert drugs or alcohol or mental illness, right, we talk about those, things happen that just don't kind of follow what you expect to happen next. And so if cocaine was in the mix, along with alcohol, along with, you know, deep depression or sadness, yes, who the heck knows what could have happened next. And that may be why, you know, my mind may not go there because that's not how I'm thinking when I'm not on those substances, right? And so that would make a lot of sense if he were on something like cocaine, especially if he didn't use it all the time. Maybe he had a bad line.
Maybe he wasn't even on cocaine, he was just trying to get it and he was already drunk.
Sure.
And I think especially how with the way drug dealers operate is they're very, you know, careful about who they speak to. You know, you can't just walk into a known drug den and say, I'd like to buy X amount, right? Like it's all about who you know being connected. And if his friend hadn't walked out with him, or if his friend put him in touch with his friend who put him in touch, you know, with a few connections down the line, you know, and he looks like an easy white kid at a bar or Target, they might have just, you know, tried to rob him and it went wrong. Maybe he was stabbed. And that's kind of what happened.
Hey, I like that theory.
I do too.
I will subscribe to that theory. It's the best one I've heard.
And my last kind of question here was the Kevin Cooper case. I'm sure if you're familiar with it, and Judge Fletcher sitting on the Ninth Circuit's 114-page dissent. It's gone back and forth in, you know, the courts for years. And a lot of it comes down to DNA. And one of my questions I had written in via email is, when you privately offer to test DNA, do you have to disclose unfavorable DNA results that you get? Or are there always an agreement met ahead of time with the prosecutor where the DNA will be exchanged regardless?
That's a great question. So the defense wants to privately test it. Did they have to turn over the results is what you're asking, right?
Because you always hear, well, we'll pay for it. The defense will pay for it. And not just in Kevin Cooper case, but in many cases. And in those situations, is some kind of an agreement met where a good contract is kind of signed with the prosecutors, where you have to see what comes back to be able to fight future DNA motions.
I'll be honest, I've never had that happen in my career.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of our standard letter.
Wouldn't state law be because there are reciprocal discovery obligations, but I don't know if in that circumstance. I mean, Shannon knows Judge Fletcher. Shannon, why don't you tell it? Why don't you just answer this question? Yeah, I don't know. I think it would probably depend on state law. Every state has a law that governs the way DNA is handled, the way DNA is tested, when it's tested, all that stuff. So you probably would have some state law determinations there. If the state's in custody of the DNA, presumably they have to release it to you in order for you to test it. So I can imagine in order to release it to you, there would have to be an agreement. And the agreement would say something like, we want to see the results as well. And you can imagine why that would be, as we've talked about before. DNA is destroyed in testing. So, you know, once you've tested that particular piece of DNA, it's destroyed. It doesn't necessarily mean there isn't more. But, you know, if you're the prosecution, you would want to see those results as well. So I can imagine that's how the agreement would work. Does it have to work that way? That I don't know the answer to.
I guess what Brett's saying is if he were the state in that case, he would make sure.
Oh yeah, I would definitely.
Grasping at
but you can
straws at
understand.
the end of their appeals when they are trying to get anything tested at the end. And a lot of the times the court's like, it's not going to make a difference regardless. And then the attorneys are like, we'll privately pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, one of those like, grasping for straws to keep the
So
case.
part of, in my experience, the defense, or who usually it's the defense, offers to pay for it because there are such backlogs with agency labs. Like we face years long backlogs, and so if you can get your testing done sooner, that could mean freedom for your guys sooner. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen it in that context, not so much to control the results, but rather because they know that they are in the queue for years long and DNA may as well not be available to them in that instance. But that's a really good question.
And I know, like in the Darley Routier case, the states basically have been like, test whatever you want, I don't know this one well enough to know. I mean, it would surprise me if they were holding it up that much, but obviously in California, he may be on death row, but it's more a question of, is an innocent man in prison? Because, I don't think California is ever going to execute anybody again.
Right. And I think the Kevin Cooper case is the classic example of, are there coincidences in true crime? Is it a coincidence that an escaped prisoner was living next to a family that was slaughtered that evening?
Right. Which it could be.
Could happen, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Shannon, come back. You tried so hard to log on.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Maybe we'll take a look at that one and see if we can dig into that a little bit. It sounds like an interesting case.
And Julian, as a fellow attorney, thanks for listening to us. You probably know all our pitfalls, so thanks for listening.
Yeah, it's been great. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for ignoring all those pitfalls.
Yeah.
I was just logging off because I just wanted to say hi to everybody.
Shannon,
hello.
Thank you for logging on. I'm sorry it took so long.
Oh, that was my fault. I've never used the app before, so I was trying to log in with my Patreon handle, which is Ada Blue, just because I'm a counselor. So, I don't ever want to offend anybody possibly with my real name. Y'all know how it is.
Yeah, we know how that is.
I wanted to say hey, and I love the community, love the podcast. It's my favorite. So I just wanted to say
thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon.
You don't have any questions or anything before you go? Nothing burning on your mind? No pressure. No pressure.
Well, I mean, I don't know what y'all have already talked about.
Ask it anyway.
That's okay. You can ask whatever you want.
I guess I was wondering, it's kind of random, and I haven't read about it in maybe a week, so maybe some things have changed. But with the Josh Duggar case that's going on, and I was reading about how they were arguing over, like, the prosecution was saying that some evidence wasn't relevant, and I was just wondering, wouldn't that possibly be a Brady violation in the future or an appeal, especially if he is guilty of such heinous things?
So the prosecution doesn't want to give the defense evidence because they say it's not relevant. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what some news articles were saying. It wasn't relevant to the case. And I mean, I guess we need more information about that, but it just I was just wondering.
That's a great question. I don't know. I haven't followed that particular fight, so I don't even know what the evidence is. But you're right. Discovery only covers what is relevant. But you can imagine why. In an investigation, you uncover a lot of things that have nothing to do with a case about Brett, for example. You can uncover lots of things about their personal lives, about affairs they're having that have nothing to do potentially with the crime that you are prosecuting them for. With that said, because of the immense burden on prosecutors to turn over anything that could be exculpatory, that's what you meant when you said Brady material, many prosecutors' offices have basically an open file discovery where you're like, you know what, this is everything I got. Most of it's not relevant. You're going to have to dig through it. It's going to make discovery really cumbersome for you. But to protect me on appeal, I am going to open my file to you, defense. And that's a strategy. You can imagine how that's both good and bad for both sides. You end up getting a bunch of crap that you don't need as defense. But also, as the prosecutor, you may be fighting about a bunch of stuff that you're like, it's not relevant.
Right.
The reason relevancy matters is, first of all, the universe is just so big, and prosecuting a case is like a really narrow slice of life, right? And your goal as a prosecutor, at least, is to be as incisive as possible. You're the surgeon. You're going in. This is all I'm coming in for. And the more junk there is, the more confusing it is for, say, a jury, right? The jury is like, I thought we were here about child porn. Why are we also talking about like his obsession, his like foot obsession, his foot fetish, and that he visits like foot fetish places? I have no idea if that's what it is. My point just being like, what does this have anything to do with anything? You can imagine that when you start throwing all this junk in that's not relevant, you miss the point of why we're here. We are here for child porn.
That
But
makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
And
but
we're,
that just and that discovery question, by the way, can be dealt with on appeal, but it can also be dealt with at the time. So if it's being challenged in real time, you can also challenge it with the court, and the court can actually ask to look at the information ex parte, meaning the judge by himself.
That's what I kind of thought. Maybe that I didn't understand that it would be the prosecutor deciding what's relevant or what's not. You know what I mean? Like, I guess if they're arguing, I thought maybe the judge would decide. But I guess
the judge might decide eventually, but the first decision is going to be by the prosecutor, and it only gets to the judge if there's like a real dispute. Because you know, judges don't want to sit around and decide in every case what's relevant and what's not. You can imagine, right? Like they don't want to do that. They only want to hear if there's like a real dispute.
Right.
So,
It's just that they're arguing about it.
yeah. So if the prosecution's saying this isn't relevant, you don't need it, the defense can file a motion to see it, and then, like Alice said, the judge would take a look at it. We actually have a three-parter coming up, and in the third part, we talk about Brady. So we're going to be talking about that some more for everybody who's interested in that.
Well, thank you so much. Right.
Great
Thank
question,
you, Shannon.
Shannon.
You're
Thank
awesome. Hello,
Hi,
Ashley.
You hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Cool. I guess one of my main questions is more about the public right to know versus like investigations. Like Maura Murray is a great example. That is like the first thing I got into when I started listening to podcasts and true crime and things. That case is obviously unsolved, and there's probably a lot of information that we don't know. And I get battling inside my head of people saying on other podcasts and news in general, like, we have a right to know these things. We need to know our public safety. And I totally understand that argument. But at the same time, they're probably closer to solving this thing than we would ever know. And I don't know if we really have that right to know that until something happens. So being that you're from that end of the spectrum that know a lot more behind the scenes, are there cases that you've seen that have been interrupted by things like podcasts or internet, Reddit threads, things like that?
Well, I mean, I don't know podcasts. I'll let Alice handle the right to know stuff because she's the expert on FOIA and everything FOIA and the exceptions that exist there. But I mean, the OJ case and the Peterson case, I mean, they were certainly affected by public attention, right? Like, and negatively. And you know, even and I certainly don't think this is a negative, because all the My Own Backyard podcast, I think that's what it's called, which is about the of course the name is escaping me, but you know what I'm talking about, the case in California. And he has recently taken down a bunch of his stuff because all of a sudden he's going to be a witness, right? Because he talked to a lot of people who are now also witnesses, and the defense is trying to make this whole, the only reason this guy got arrested is because of this podcast, and this everything is corrupted. You can't believe anything, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes on that, and that might end up being one of those, like, you know, sort of the dangers of this. But Alice can talk to you about. Alice knows all about right to know and criminal
It's not
cases.
an area I necessarily want to be an expert in. It just life happens to you. Ashley, that's a great question. And you're right. It's always a balance. It's a balance when you're on the public side, right? Like as a journalist, and it's also a balance on the law enforcement side. It's not like law enforcement hates letting the public know information. It's that sometimes you have to protect that information for those evidentiary reasons that we were talking about, to weed out liars, to weed out false confessions, those sorts of things. And that's why honestly, there's so much pressure to solve cases quickly because once a case is solved, who cares? Let everyone know, right? Once you have your evidence for court, you can let everyone know where that serial killer operates. It doesn't matter. You've caught him. He's okay. Everyone's okay in that neighborhood. So I know if there's a perception that law enforcement doesn't like sharing things, that's not the case. It's that they have to balance. And we honestly don't know what the effect is sometimes. Like there are roundtable discussions where we're like, should we let this out? It might trigger someone to come forward on this issue, but then we lose this. And it's a cost benefit analysis that law enforcement is doing all the time when they release information. And sometimes from the outside, it's easy to say, I think you've misstepped. We've said this before. We think Delphi, the police there probably have withheld a little too much because they probably wanted to protect those girls, right? We don't know that for a fact. We have no idea. We don't work in that jurisdiction. But just know that question that you asked is actually something that prosecutors and law enforcement think about all the time, because a lot of times law enforcement needs the help of the public. We can't do these cases without witnesses a lot of times, right? We need someone to give us that tip. Someone who said, no, I did see someone in a blue jacket go into that store at 8 p.m. and we know the crime occurred at 8:03, right? I mean, it is tips like that can change the entire game. And sometimes you have to decide what to release to hope that will trigger someone to say, wait a second, there was a blue jacket. But at the same time, maybe that blue jacket is what you need to hold back because you have a blue jacket in custody and you need that to be, someone to tell you about it without ever having heard about it in the news. So all to say, good question, and it is a constant battle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. I'll jump off here. Thanks again so much for everything you do. I love the podcast.
Thank you, Ashley.
Hi, Laura.
Hello, Laura.
Hi, Brett and Alice. Yeah. It's so
Where'd the
cool
cat
to
go?
talk to you.
It's so cool. There he is. It's so cool to talk to you too.
Sorry, that's my cat. But I love the podcast. Just want to say, hey, you guys are awesome. But I wanted to talk to you guys about a case that's super famous. And I know you guys are tired of talking about horrific crimes against children and everything. And I get it.
There's so many of them.
I know.
Might as well talk about it.
I think there's something about them that just like you can't let go of, because they're not solved and everything. But I was just curious if you guys were ever going to cover the JonBenet Ramsey case. I know it's really controversial and very polarizing. I'm sure you get a lot of requests for it. I was just curious if you're going to cover it in the future.
Yes, we are going to cover it.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
I don't know
really
when.
What you're going to say.
I don't know when we're going to cover it.
Sorry. Every time I think I know what my theory is, and then I'll change it. Like I thought I really knew, and then someone will be like, well, what about this? And then I'm like, oh, well, is that fact or is that someone just saying that? Like, I don't know what really is really evidence and what's fact with that case. So, anyways.
I will say, yes, Laura, I think both Brett and I want to cover it really badly. It's such a big case. It's really daunting. We've even started the research process, but like to record it and to put it together, we might have to take a sabbatical to put it together. But you are in good company because at CrimeCon, I would say that was probably the most requested in-person case. Like people coming up to us and saying, I want JonBenet. So there's so many aspects of that case. And there's so much to discuss about the law, about human psychology, about crime scenes and, behavioral analysis. I mean, that case has it all. And it's fascinating and devastating, obviously. But I think we will, Brett. We'll do it.
Well, yeah,
especially because Laura asked.
I believe you guys. You guys got it.
We weren't going to do it, but now that you've asked, we're definitely going to do it.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful night. Thanks again for all you do.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Hi,
hello, Alicia.
Hey, y'all.
Are you hiding from like your family in your car?
Yeah, it's about to be bedtime, but it's okay. They can keep watching Disney Plus for another few minutes. It's good. Roll Tide.
Awesome.
I'm off today, so yeah, I'm ready for next weekend though.
Yeah.
Steven's
Yeah.
to the game with the kids. Our buddy got
that's
him
nice.
got some extra tickets. So
That should be a good one because we'll definitely win that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Alicia, you're the fan who's caused us the most problems of all our fans. All our
I mean,
listeners,
right.
it's you.
I feel like I'm the luckiest. Like
You are. Yeah. Yeah. Our research assistant for Taylor Swift, Alicia.
my podcast, the prosecutors, my buddies, they did an episode just for me.
I think that made me that post made me laugh the most. Recently, someone on the gallery, which is a fan Facebook group, someone like recently listened to it and they're like, I just found this podcast. I really like them, but I really have to question their decisions about Taylor Swift and diving into conspiracies. And I was like dying laughing because they're listening to it.
It's so obviously a joke, though. But I laughed so hard the whole time. I don't let my kids listen to it, and they laugh so hard. Like Boston,
that's hilarious.
Like, I want to listen to more of that podcast, so I let them listen to the Ghost Ship episode. I'm like, I don't know. I guess someone's like, okay.
Wow, that's the other request. People have asked us to make podcasts that are kid friendly. I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know. True crime podcast. Ours are about as kid friendly as they can be. There's no I
expect there'll be some kind of something silly around in October that'll be maybe appropriate. I don't know.
Hey, dark and scary in October.
Yeah, but you could do.
You know, here, Brett, stay here. I have a present for you, Brett.
You have a present for me? Okay. Wow.
I'm really excited about this. No, this is for October. This is for Brett for October. You hear it? You hear it?
I hear it. Yeah.
Look what I got you today, and I'm so excited about it.
Oh wow, that's so scary. I feel threatened.
Well, I saw it. And I had to go buy it.
Don't walk up any stairs with it.
I know. And I stood in the supply room. They were getting it delivered. And I watched them unload the boxes. And I asked them to open the box for me so that I could get
nice. Nice.
Okay, nice. I'm sorry. That's all. Happy October, Brett. Almost.
Yeah.
It's a little early, but
Well, have you seen that 7 Deadly Sins murder in Alabama that happened last year?
No.
I sent you a link on Twitter, but then I also resent the last message that hadn't sent. So, you may have missed that.
Sins.
So yeah, if you type in 7, well, yes, there were 7 murders too. They had a motorcycle club, but they didn't have motorcycles. And then 2 of the guys got mad because one of them had gone rogue and done some stuff. They were scared of retaliation from the white supremacists. And so they decided to dismantle the club and they killed everybody that was there. And then they ran off to Oregon and were in Oregon for a week or something before they were found. And they had court, I don't know, I think in June. And
so this literally just happened.
Yeah, well, it happened last year in 2020. But recent. The one guy is trying to claim youthful offender, though. And so my question is, what will that mean? That won't mean he's not going to get in trouble, right? It'll just mean it doesn't stay on his record after he gets out.
He's saying youthful offender for a supple murder.
Right?
Every state is different. It doesn't mean it's not on your record because your youthful offenses.
Alabama.
He would have to be a very minor participant in the murder to get youthful offender status.
So he's
much
probably
more likely to end up on death row than he is. Yeah,
he's not going to happen. Okay, that my question though. So
now to continue my pomegranate theme, I'm having blueberry pomegranate bubbly, who needs to endorse us.
Oh, that looked like past cans.
Anyway, like one of those TikToks, right?
Right?
Thank you, Alicia. You're awesome.
Yes. Roll Tide. Talk to y'all later.
Talk to you later.
Soo-Yeon, thank you for being here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I am Soo Hyun from Toronto, Canada. I am a refugee and immigration lawyer.
Oh,
And I
wow.
really
Okay.
love your podcast so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I've been a fan. I got to learn about you guys from Facebook group, another podcast like Facebook group, and I've been really enjoying it. And it's so nice to hear your perspectives and yeah, interesting because like I am a lawyer, but I am not that familiar with criminal law, and so it's like really interesting to hear about the cases and yeah, and then you actually in one of the recent cases, you asked about the Canadian kind of equivalent, like mental like yeah, mental health insanity defense. I don't know that much. It's not my area of expertise at all, but it seems that the law is pretty similar, but it's rarely ever used, and it's just not used very successfully.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Canada just seems to be in general more conservative.
I think it's not used that often in the United States either successfully. I think that's like
Yeah.
one of those things that Hollywood made you believe that
Yes,
the
that's right.
insanity defense happens all the time, but I don't think it does.
Yeah, I hear. I don't even think it's like used that often. I think one of the more recent cases that it was raised was in a person drove a van into a bunch of people and killed a lot of people. And that yeah. So, but it ultimately I don't think it was successful. But yeah, I just remember that. But I mainly wanted to just say hi, and I also come from like an artistic background. I'm a cellist, and so when I saw Alice that you were a dancer, I was like you're a tiny person, but tiny but mighty. Yeah, we're scary. You don't mess with tiny Asian girls.
I love it. Tiny but mighty. We should get shirts like that.
Yes. And Alice, she plays the violin, so you guys should get together and like,
Well,
do
I
a
should
concert.
come down to a crime con one of these days when we can travel a little bit more freely. Yeah, so that I wanted to just say that I can really appreciate what you guys do. And I honestly, I don't have no idea how you guys find the time to do this because I don't have children and like I can't even imagine.
I
But
don't
you guys,
either,
I
to
don't
be
know.
honest with you.
Super people.
If everything stops, if you don't see any more episodes, it's probably because
Yeah.
we both keeled over.
Right.
Well, I don't know. You guys have been pretty consistent. Like even when there's been like a new baby born, and I really
Yeah.
hope everything's all right with him.
Oh, it's doing great. It's doing fantastic. I owe everybody an update. Doing amazing.
Yay!
I mean,
Oh, and also
could be better.
I went to college in Boston, so I'm so
Okay.
happy whenever you talk about the New England.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I have like one question.
Sure.
I don't know if you've already like covered this case, but there is an AUSA murder case, Tom Wales. I didn't even know about this case until like very recently. I just started listening to this podcast, like Somebody Somewhere. I mean, like it's been interesting because the hosts or journalists who have also been prosecutors. So I mean, I think in general, I really appreciate the way lawyers like tell the story with the timelines. Like it's easy to follow for me. But that case seems really unique and interesting, and I was wondering if you were thinking at all about covering that case.
So we have a folder for it, and we have like we have the beginnings of an outline that we still need to work through.
It's
It
close
hits
to
a little
home.
close
It's
to
so
home.
scary. It's so scary. And
Yeah.
Shannon worked with Tom.
Yeah, Shannon
so maybe
knows.
Shannon
Yeah.
can just come on, or maybe Shannon can call Soo-Yeon and you guys can talk about the case.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Or Shannon, we could do like a guest podcast where Shannon just does the podcast. Or you guys could do it together. And then
That's
We're gonna ask like dumb questions.
No dumb questions.
There are no dumb questions.
Okay, well, I hope one day you might cover it. It's just like I don't know. It's just because you were talking. You had mentioned a few times how you do get threats sometimes, and you do feel yeah, unsafe sometimes because of the cases that you work on. But in terms of actual like murder happening to a prosecutor, this apparently is like the only case. And I don't know, it seems like a lot of it just seems so odd, and it's been going on for so long. So anyway, I don't have to tell you about that, but I just wanted to bring it up because I am listening with interest.
Well, that's a great suggestion. And thank you so much. And thank you for what you do. And,
Thank
keep
you.
up the good work.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Oh, and Alice, you are amazing. And do you guys still need more words? Because I have tons of words.
Oh, so many words. Email us,
You're
prosecutorspod@gmail.com. You send me all
Also,
the
I
words.
have no idea why anybody would have anything negative to say about you guys with the podcast or whatever. The only one that I can sort of agree with, and it was only in the beginning, like the intro music being long. Yes, it was pretty long, but you guys cut that down into half, and
We've never cut it down. You have grown to love it. You just don't know it.
See, people just need to get used to stuff. We're so entitled. Anyways, there's nothing wrong with you guys. You guys are amazing, and I love you. And bye.
I love you, Suyan. Thank you for making my night. Hi, Juliana.
One more quick question on the grand jury brought up recently in grand jury secrecy. In terms of leaks to the press, if somebody were to leak from the grand jury information to the Washington Post or the Times, can a journalist, I mean, you can argue that a lot of that information has nothing to do with national security, right? Especially John Bonet grand jury, 9 months. If information documents were leaked, can a reporter report on that even though they know about grand jury secrecy? What's kind of their ethical obligation there?
There are some cases on this. There's case law on this because this has occurred in very famous cases about whether journalists, and I want to say that journalists are not directly prosecuted because essentially protection of the media.
Yeah. They found the leaker.
But they were, I'm sorry.
Right? They found the leaker. The leaker is the one that gets prosecuted.
Yes. It's like steaming right now. Juliana, you might not know the case, or one of the attorneys in this room may know the case, but I remember there was, because they were prosecuted, the journalists were, but they had received the information rather than, and they, I think, knew who the identity of the leaker was, but would not disclose it, and that's why they were prosecuted. And ultimately, if I remember this case correctly, I want to say, wasn't it a Supreme Court case? I want to say it was. I could be wrong. This is outside of my wheelhouse right now, but basically that we can't prosecute journalists because of protection of the media.
You can prosecute them for contempt, right? So that's what they prosecute them for. Is they prosecute them for contempt. Now, what happens is they go to jail and they spend some time in jail and they say, we're not going to tell you. And eventually they just get released, right? So it's like a very weird thing. And I know in most states, the federal government, there are some real restrictions on prosecuting journalists. Like, it's got to be pretty bad. I think, like you said, usually probably has to involve some sort of national security leak. I don't think a grand jury leak is going to get a journalist prosecuted. I mean, I know of an example in a case that I'm familiar with, where a prosecutor was leaking to a journalist grand jury information, and that journalist was then publishing it. And that became a big controversy in the trial,
right?
But nobody even tried to touch the process. I mean, the journalist was just a journalist, but it was kind of like once he got it, he could report it, right? Like, it was secret, but once he got it, there's nothing we can do to stop him from reporting it. So I think that's how that went in that case that I knew about.
And then, in your opinion, in the Jeffrey McDonald case, you know how it went up to the Fourth Circuit, and the Fourth Circuit overturned the conviction, sent it back down, saying, his speedy trial was violated, and then it has to commence the trial first before you can bring that claim.
Yep.
Then they went to the Fourth Circuit after he lost the district trial. Fourth Circuit basically said reverse his conviction, violation of speedy trial, went to SCOTUS. Do you think, because this issue was not yet percolating in the circuits yet, that SCOTUS took this case, which they sometimes do, for the purpose of creating law, but also because they hated Jeffrey McDonald and fully believed that he was guilty after reading all of the briefs?
I think they took it because they thought the Fourth Circuit was kind of flipping them the bird. Personally, I think they were like, look, Yes, the reasoning we gave you was this was premature, but we also made it pretty clear that this is not a legitimate, or like the way he's framing it is not legitimate, and then you come back and you just do it again. I think if Jeffrey McDonald had not raised it initially, right? If he had not raised it initially and it had never gone up, and then he was convicted and then he raised it, I think you might be right. I think they might have just let it go. Because like you said, there wasn't a circuit split. It wasn't something that had like made its way up.
You mean let it go as deny cert, or they would have taken the case
Deny
and they
cert.
Okay.
No, I think it's possible they would have denied cert if they were hearing it for the first time.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because it was favorable to him, denied cert. It wasn't a circuit split at that point. Okay.
But because they had already heard it once and made a ruling, I think they felt like we've got to hear it again now that it's come back to us.
Okay.
And might have been a little irritated at the fact that the Fourth Circuit sort of was thumbing their nose at them.
Okay.
But I mean, who knows, right?
Right.
Who knows why these courts do what they do at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Alice, it's like an earthquake going on in Alice's room.
This is what happens when they let me out of the closet. I couldn't get my plug over here. I'm good. Hi, Tosh.
Tosh.
Sorry about that.
Hi. I'm so
Hi.
nervous to be talking to
Don't
you
be
guys.
nervous.
But
Don't be
excited.
nervous. I just literally dropped my computer.
She did literally just do that, so.
Fair. So I have so when I like think about legal things now, which I do from time to time, just from like listening to stuff and reading stuff with like no law background at all, of course. I kind of keep like a running list of things that I like wish I could ask you guys. So this is
Here we are.
So here we are. So what tried, like, this might not be the right terminology, but like co-defendants seem to sometimes be tried together, and like sometimes they're tried separately. And sometimes I think I understand why this might be, like in the West Memphis 3, how you had like the one guy who then testified against like, oh my God, I can't remember his name, who then testified against the other 3. So that makes sense but for others, I don't understand why they're sometimes tried together and sometimes tried separately. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you for asking. That was a fantastic. Oh, you
Oh,
can
you
stay.
didn't have
That
to
was
go.
such a
You
good
can stay.
question. That was like
You
a
had
very
other ones.
good.
Yeah.
Very good legal question. So, that's a great question. Typically, the default is that you are tried with your co-defendants. So, a co-defendant is someone who is indicted in the same indictment with you, and in order to sever your case from your co-defendant, you have to file a motion for severance. And it depends on your jurisdiction, but you have to meet certain findings of why you should have your case tried separately from your co-defendants. And you Tosh listed, one of the factors in at least some jurisdictions. Maybe there is evidence that would be prejudicial that would come out for your co-defendant, but would be helpful for you. And so then it wouldn't come out. Basically, if you can show that you couldn't have a fair trial with the evidence that would be presented with the other co-defendants, it's kind of a fairness issue. So there are legal standards that you have to meet in order to get a severance, but it's something you have to actively move for, and it's against the default.
Right. So in the West Memphis 3 case, you have a situation where you have one person who is admitted. He's admitted that he did it, right? I mean, just assume, for instance, that they're all guilty. So he admitted he did it. And if you try that, and now he's saying he didn't do it, and you're going to use that statement against him, right? If you try all 3 people together, you can't put that statement in where he confesses and says they did it and then tell the jury, but for the purposes of deciding whether or not they did it, just ignore that statement, right? Like no jury is going to be able to put that out of their mind that the third co-defendant admitted to what he did, and in doing so talked about all these other people. So that he had to be severed. They had to try him separately. There's no way you could try them together. Now, Jason Baldwin and the other guy, Damien Eccles, right? Like they're both just saying, look, neither one of us did this. This is crazy. This whole thing is insane. Their defense, it doesn't hurt the other one. Now, in reality, did it? Yes, because there was no evidence against Jason Baldwin. And basically, Damien Echols is, I don't know about Damien Echols, but they got convicted because of Damien Echols. I mean, Damien Echols gets on the stand, he testifies, he looks like a crazy person, and so they convict them both. That's the reality. But when you just looked at it before the trial started, there was no reason to sever it. And so, like Alice said, the default's going to be you're going to try them together.
Okay. And then that case is kind of will blow my mind for many reasons, but the Alford plea being one of them, where it just, and I've emailed you guys this before, but it just doesn't seem that it's fair for victims' families, for people to be able to use an Alford plea, because then it seems like then there would be no to continue to look for the people who maybe actually committed the crime. Or is that?
Well, I mean, usually, the Michael Peterson case, the victims didn't like it because they really think Michael Peterson's guilty, and they didn't like the fact he was getting out. I think in the West Memphis 3, you're right. There were several of the family members who had decided that they were not guilty, didn't like it for that reason, because that's true. I mean, look, nobody's ever pled guilty in an Alford plea, and then the police investigated that case. The case is over. That's a guilty plea. They chalk it up and they move on. So, I mean, you're right. There are problems with Alford pleas, and there's a definite downside. But the Supreme Court's basically said that you have a constitutional right to enter into an Alford plea. So what are you going to do?
Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hi, Chris.
Hey, so my question's very similar, I guess the opposite. I want to know why Darlie was only tried for the one murder and not both children.
Some people have said that it was so that the prosecution, if she was not convicted of the one, could try her for the other. I don't know what the law is in Texas on that, but that sounds like a clear double jeopardy problem to me. Usually, what they talk about the common nucleus of facts. Like there's a common nucleus of facts, and you charge based on that. So if you charge one charge based on that, and you lose that charge, you can't come up with another charge. Now, I guess they would say, look, it's a different person, so it's slightly different. If that was their strategy, I think it's a dangerous strategy. I think at the end of the day, it was just easier for them to charge the one murder, and then the other murder is just 404B evidence. We talked about 404B evidence before. So you don't have to prove the second murder, right? Like you prove the one murder, and you can prove it, both of the evidence about that murder and about the 404B evidence for the other murder. But it's not like you're actually having to prove both murders. So to me, I kind of felt like that's why they did it. But
and that may be what it is. So we do this a lot. What?
You're in your alien, or I am hearing you as your alien voice. Alice.
Do you guys hear me as an alien?
Alice, why don't you log off and log back on? It's a weird thing that happens whenever we do this. If you've been with us a long time, Alice, for whatever reason, about an hour into the Get Vokl, turns into an alien. We don't really know why.
My other question then with that is if you think if Darlie hadn't testified, would the outcome have been different? I don't know.
Before I answer that, I want to hear Alice speak.
Am I an alien?
No, see, there you go. It's reset.
I just had to log off. And I really want to answer Chris's very good question later.
Why don't you answer? Go ahead.
No. He had a question. You answer.
Well, he just asked whether or not Darlie would have been convicted if she hadn't testified. I think she would have, but I do think her testimony was pretty bad for her. But not as bad, I think, as some people make it out to be. Now, one interesting thing is we, like an appellate court, we're just reading the cold transcript. And a lot of times it's so different. I mean, I'll go back to the Derek Chauvin case, right? And I forget his name, but the doctor who was from like Ireland or whatever, who testified about oxygen levels. If you had read that in a transcript, it might have been convincing, but seeing him testify was so powerful. And maybe that's the way it was with Darlie. I mean, maybe just she was so bad on the stand that it really, really hurt her. I thought there were bad things in the transcript, but I didn't necessarily feel like, oh, she's totally dead because she,
she testified or whatever. Yes, Dr. Tobin.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do this all the time with respect to like lots of transactions, say in fraud. So if someone stole someone's credit card and bought 10 different things, oftentimes you'll see they don't charge all 10 things because it makes the trial really long. Your evidence is a lot. You can just show maybe 3 of them, and then the other 7 come in. You still have to show that they did it, but there's kind of common scheme with all of them. The reason you don't typically see that with respect to murders is because they are victims, and typically people want justice for those victims. In this case, the victims are in the same family and they're minors, and they kind of have the same family, right? For example, you won't see a murder of 3 separate people. And they will only charge 1 and bring in the other 2 as 404B evidence, because the other 2 families will say, what the heck? What about my children who were, murdered? And so you typically don't see that 404B use in the murder context because of seeking justice for the victims, but maybe in this context because it was one family, maybe they explained it to the dad, I don't know, to say, look, this is already going to be a circus of a trial. It's already going to be this long. The dad, the surviving member of the family, other than Darlie, has to live through the horror of reliving all of this again. And they may be like, the trial may be dragged on twice as long if we have to prove 2 murders. So I think it's in the best interest for everyone here. So you can get back to raising your, 1 surviving child if we can just prove 1. I don't know that, but that may be the case. And it's also why you never really see that. You will typically see both counts of murder, or however many counts for the different victims. But good question. Hi.
Hello, Terrence.
Hi, Terrence.
Hello. How are you guys?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing great. Big fan. First time caller.
Love it.
Long time listener.
Long time listener, first time caller. No, y'all are doing great work. I love you guys' podcast. It's like shot to be. It's like you and True Crime Garage, number 1, like neck and neck. So you guys are the best.
That's quite the compliment.
I have a question, kind of along the lines of, I guess, persons of interest and I guess the distinction between persons of interest and what law enforcement would call suspects, or like the naming of these individuals. I'm thinking about 3 cases in particular, probably one that are probably around you guys' sphere as you guys are thinking about true crime and stuff and talking about it. The first one is Patty Adkins. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this case.
I think I am.
The
give me
girl
some,
went
give me
cold. So Patty Adkins was a woman who worked at a Honda plant, and she was gonna go away with her boyfriend, who also worked at the Honda plant, and the Honda plant was gonna go on this 1-week shutdown, and they were kind of like they were, nobody knew about their relationship because her boyfriend was married, and so he told her that he was going to take her away to Canada on a romantic getaway, and that she didn't need to pack any clothes, and that she didn't need to bring anything else, and that after their shift was done, that she should go hide in his truck. He had one of those beds of his, like a covered bed for his truck, and that she should hide in the bed of his truck, and then they would make their getaway to Canada and have a romantic getaway week, and well, lo and behold, she's never seen again. Right. And this guy's never been named publicly, and it's like they found a spot of blood in his truck. They found she had cats, and they found her cat hairs in the bed of the truck. It's like, clearly this guy is a person of interest, or a suspect, and yet law enforcement has never named him publicly. So that's one case. Of course, I think you guys are familiar with James. I know you guys are familiar with James Renner and Mara Murray. And, for the longest time, James Renner has been, for a while, he's been touting like, oh, Aaron Larkin, she's going to be, named in this defamation suit because she's interviewing somebody who's she's interviewing. Help me out with the details here. She's interviewing somebody that has named somebody else, and they're not supposed to do that. And so she's going to get taken to court for defamation or libel. And then
everybody's
lastly,
suing everybody and more
yeah,
these days.
and I think lastly, being a big True Crime Garage listener, one of their more recent episodes, offering initials for, as far as I know, not even a suspect, not even a person of interest, just witness in the under the bridge case, the Delphi murders. So not a person of interest, not a suspect, just flat out a witness. So I just wondered if you guys could lend some expertise as far as like, how do you navigate that circus of naming somebody versus not naming somebody versus what law enforcement, dictates whether you can do, and then what sort of legal hot water you can get into if you break those rules. So that's my question.
My understanding, and this may be an urban legend, of where the person of interest suspect distinction began was the Richard Jewell case. So the Atlanta bombing, right? 1996.
Okay. Yeah.
Richard Jewell was named a suspect. He, in fact, was a hero. And he sued a lot of people and won a lot of money, right? And from that point forward, they really kind of stopped calling people suspects in the beginning and called them persons of interest. It's like a weird little sleight of hand, right? Oh, you're not a suspect, just person of interest. And usually I think when you hear person of interest, but I think it works actually, because I think person of interest, even though usually I think they're basically the same thing, you also could just have someone you want to talk to, right? Like we're interested in talking to this person. They are a person of interest. The person who was in that red truck that was seen by the whatever, right? We want to talk to
the
that
Missy
person.
Beavers truck that was driving around a little while ago, far away.
Like, who knows if that car has anything to do with the Missy Beavers case, right? But if we could talk to the person,
or Maura Murray, red truck,
same thing, Maura Murray, red truck. If we can talk to that person and rule them out, then we'll be done with them. And usually at this point, law enforcement only calls somebody a suspect if basically they know they're guilty, right? Like you don't get called a suspect until you're basically arrested. I think, so I think they've sort of broadened it out to person of interest to sort of protect themselves from doing that. And we've talked about the True Crime Garage thing with, I mean, I just think, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to cast aspersions on what they do or what they don't do. I think everybody has to kind of make their own decision about how they're going to handle that stuff.
Yeah.
It worries me. It worries me when you're talking about random people, like you said, who he could just be a witness. Somebody's trying to be helpful. And all of a sudden there's all these people on Reddit trying to find his home address because he's a child murderer, right? Like that bothers me. And I just think you have to watch out for that kind of stuff.
Good thoughts. Thanks, guys.
No
Thank
problem.
you so much for asking.
Well, guys, we've been going for about an hour and a half now. I think we're going to basically wrap it up. But if anybody has any last questions they want to ask before we'll do this, I promise we'll do it again. It's been a little while since we did the last one. We'll try and get back on our regular schedules so we won't leave you guys hanging. One thing I do want to say, to all of you guys, y'all are awesome. And thank you so much. Everybody who's here is giving their hard-earned money to support this podcast and keep us going. And what you guys all need to do is to tell Alice to buy a computer, because Alice needs a new computer. And I've been trying to force her to do it, and she doesn't want to use the podcast resources to do it, but she needs to do it. So everybody tell Alice to buy a new computer. So
I just want to conserve all our resources for all of you. That's all.
Well, if you had a new computer, might not sound like an alien an hour into the Get Vokl.
It's my thing, Brett.
Now, is it like 2:00 in the morning or 3:00 in the morning where you are? Aren't you in Britain, Gemma?
Yep, it is 3:30 a.m.
Wow.
3:30. You're the best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I would say, Alice, you need to buy a new computer.
There you go. Thank you.
Well played.
Although I do love the alien voice. Yeah. But I was just wondering of your opinions on Chris Kramer's and Lisanne Froon, the two girls that went missing in Panama. I've heard of it, but I've just started looking into it more, like reading about it, and it's just the pictures and the...
So
really
we have to
crazy.
do this case a lot. We get asked to do this case a lot, and it's an interesting thing, and maybe we will do it. But to me, you had two girls who went into the jungle in Panama. I guess it was Panama. I think it was Panama. Who go into the jungle in Panama. They're expecting to be there for a few hours. They take no supplies. They're dressed in like shorts and a short sleeve shirt. They get lost in the jungle and die. To me, I guess I don't really know where all the mystery comes in. I know things that people have pointed to, the reasons they think it's a murder or whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, it just feels like they just went into the forest and into the jungle and got lost. And to me, those pictures are what I would do if I was alone in the dark in the jungle and there were like animals and stuff around. I'd be flashing pictures like crazy to try and avoid them. And it may be one that we try and dive into a little bit more and see. But to me, just the initial thought has always been, this seems like one where I don't know quite where the mystery is, I guess. And the photos are totally creepy. And look, they're creepy for all sorts of reasons, right? Like, the desperation in those photos, right? The desperations in the calls to they're calling like the equivalent of 911 in the Netherlands, which obviously that phone call is not going to go through, right? Just a horrific thing to happen to two people. My understanding is when you get to the top of that trail and you're kind of looking around and doing your thing, it's really easy to keep going instead of going back the way you came. And if you keep going, you end up going deeper and deeper into the jungle. And once you do that, getting back is really hard. So that's kind of what I think happened. But like I said, if anybody has strong feelings about that one way or the other, I'm open. I am open to being convinced that it was some sort of crime.
Thank you.
You're
no,
welcome.
Thank you for staying up so late for us.
Yes.
I truly. Did you have another question, Jem? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I want to cover the case just because you stayed up till 3:30 to ask the question about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I don't know if I'm reading the wrong things but one part of me thinks like they just died. Obviously they got lost in the jungle, like it happens. But then this thing that I was reading the other day was saying that there was a severed foot that was found and just part of a pelvic bone, and then one bone away from where they were found. But then I was thinking like animals could have scattered the remains. But
right.
it
And
just
it's actually
seems a
not
bit
that.
strange whether.
You hear about this a lot. You'll hear about feet washing up on the shores, right, of beaches. And it's like, is there a murder? Is there a serial killer who's cutting off people's feet, dumping them in the ocean? Probably what's actually happening is people drown, or they go, for whatever reason, they end up in the water. Maybe they're murdered and their body's dumped in the water, but it's a very natural thing because of the shoe, and the shoe is protecting the foot, and the decay that's happening on the unprotected leg, the foot separates naturally. And you end up having a foot in a shoe, right? Because it's protected. So you have these girls who are wearing shorts and they're wearing shoes. If they did die and animals are going after them and spreading their body parts around, the foot's going to stay in the shoe, and it's going to end up wherever. And then the rest of the body is going to be wherever it is. If you remember when we did the Maitrice Richardson case, one of the things that was weird about that case was like some of the stuff you saw and the way the body was did not fit with what you would expect if there were animals who were like doing things with the body, right? But I kind of feel like with the Froome case, the Panama girls, I forget the other girl's name, it looks more like what you would expect if you did have animals who went after the body. Kramer's, yeah. So that's sort of my thought on it. I mean, I know there's this photograph that was deleted, right? Like that's what people always point to. There's a photograph that was deleted. Supposedly it was permanently deleted, which you can only do in a computer. And that's what people say. Now, I have read that is true if there was actually a photo that was deleted, but what you also could have had was it's just like a technical glitch, right? It's just like an artifact in the phone, and there never was, and it didn't exist or whatever. I mean, I just don't know. I think if you look at you have the photograph that's deleted, and we're told that photograph, I mean, you would have to imagine like somebody deletes that photograph. They take the phone out of the jungle, take it back to their house where they got the computer. They hook the computer up to the phone. for reasons that are unclear, rather than delete all the photos, I only delete that one, which is very obvious. I mean, you only delete one photo. That's kind of going to stand out. Then, rather than just getting rid of the phone, which you could easily do, they take it back into the jungle and then like leave it in the backpack for people to find so they can find out that there's a missing photo, right? I mean, to me, how likely is that as opposed to there's just some sort of little technical glitch going on here? So to me, sort of like hanging this, there's some weird murder going on in a case where there's a very obvious natural cause for it. I just don't see it. But like I said, and we're only answering this question in this much detail, Jim, because you asked it at 3:30 in the morning. Usually if it's a case we haven't covered yet, we might cover that one day. But if anybody has an argument that this was a murder, hit us up, prosecutorspod@gmail.com, because we'll cover it, because I'm interested in the case. I've listened to everything on this case. I've watched all the YouTube videos on this case. It's a case that interests me. I've just never been able to get over the hump from natural cause to some sort of murder.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought on it was like they've just got lost and died. They've succumbed to the natural elements, but then the more I read, especially on Reddit and Facebook, I was like, oh yeah, that could. And then it just seems to be like this big mystery that the more I read, the more crazy it seems. But logically, it just seems like two girls have.
When the Reddit people hear what I said, there'll be a pitchfork party out for me, because the people on Reddit, in that there is a subreddit about this, and they are 100% convinced that they were murdered. And maybe they were. I mean, I don't know, but I just I've never seen the evidence that made me think it was likely.
Yeah.
But a great question.
Yeah, and can we just say it's people like Jem who stays up till 3:30, and all of you still in this room. I don't even know what hour this is. That got us to 2 million listens.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Like, you guys are just amazing. I couldn't believe it
awesome.
when Brett was like, "Guess what? 2 million," and I was like, 2 million what?
Well, you two deserve it. You're just brilliant, both of you.
That's a very nice thing to say, but we are 100% blessed by you guys, and we know that you're telling your friends, and that as much as anybody, you guys are responsible for getting us there. So thank you so much.
And thank you guys for taking the boxes to ask questions tonight. It was so fun to see your faces. I love you guys all. And we will do this again. And maybe we'll do it at a time that is not 3:30 for you, Jem.
Yes. Well, we need to do like a Saturday at noon episode or something. But
yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, this has been awesome. This has been fantastic. Like Alice said, we will do it again. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the prosecutors. Yay.
Yay.
Yay, Alice.
Yay, Brett. This is actually what we do after we stop recording as well, is we just say yay to each other.
Yeah. And then we just sit around and talk. And what's funny is half the time our conversations afterwards are far more interesting than the conversations we actually put on the tape.
I know, we're so restrained.
Why didn't we talk about this when we were recording?
I know. I hold back a little because I don't want to offend people, but I have
thoughts. Alice is like, I'll tell you what I really think now. It's like, what?
Anyway. I do that a lot. I think I was on fire when we recorded this week because I had a tough week.
Yeah, you were on fire, but you did have a tough week. So.
We should
not
release all of that.
Nobody even asked what case we're doing next. Kind of makes me sad. Usually they do.
Maybe they just want us to do John Benet Ramsey.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it wasn't John Benet Ramsey, so
it was not John Benet Ramsey.
So what case are you doing next?
Oh, there you go. And you guys will get all 3 episodes as soon as I get finished editing the last one. Okay, well we're doing the Yvonne Lane case, the murder in alliance case.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of you guys asked us for this case.
And we will also point you to Maggie Freeling's podcast where she's doing a current investigation of the case.
Like
and she shared a ton of information with us. So all thanks to her.
Yep. And we told her when we started, there were no guarantees about how we were going to come out. So, And Maggie has already said that we should do a Get Vokl about it. So, Alicia, you will get your wish. True crime binge. I don't think we have. I'm insulted suddenly.
So insulted. Mm-hmm. Wait, we didn't pitch. Oh no, we did at the very beginning. For those of you still in the room, we're going to Savannah Crime Expo in 2 weeks.
September 25th.
Something like that. Yeah.
Y'all should come if you can.
Yeah, Jim, it might be a far drive for you, but
Yeah, I'll just pop over for like the day.
where are you specifically, Jim?
I'm in Cambridgeshire on the Cambridgeshire-Norfolk border.
Okay.
So,
Well, one day we'll have to come to the UK CrimeCon. So maybe when we do
that is
that.
happening this weekend.
I know. Well, we're not going to be there this year.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to be there this weekend either because I've got work.
There you go. There you go. But one day we'll make it there.
Yeah.
Well, look, guys, this has been awesome. We love you all. You're amazing. Jim, go to sleep.
Yeah. Well, I
And
saw
we
it
will-
and I wasn't able to catch you the last couple of times, and I thought,
don't apologize.
No. We're saying you're amazing.
You're awesome. You're so incredible. Yeah, like that's just awesome. I wouldn't stay up for anybody, so the fact you stay up for us is like a real.
I wouldn't leave a date for anybody.
I know you guys are crazy. Not to insult anybody, but y'all are crazy.
Y'all are awesome crazy. Okay, we're gonna let you guys go to sleep because I feel like we're being bad examples and not letting you guys leave.
Exactly. All right, guys. We'll see y'all later.
Bye guys. See you next time.
Love y'all. Bye, Alex.
Bye.